Climate crisis is no longer a distant threat. It's here, reshaping our planet in real time. From melting ice caps to raging wildfires, human-driven changes are accelerating at an unprecedented pace. By 2050, more than 1 billion people could be forcibly displaced by rising seas, extreme heat, and collapsing food systems. Cities like Jakarta and Dhaka may become uninhabitable islands, drowned or scorched by an unforgiving sun. If global temperatures surpass 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we may cross irreversible tipping points.
Ice sheets collapsing, the Amazon rainforest turning into dry savanna, and the oceans acidifying beyond repair.
The climate shock is already underway. May 2025 was the second warmest May ever recorded, and global average temperatures are now about 1.4 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. 21 of the last 22 months have crossed the critical 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. This persistent heat is accelerating ice melt in Greenland, which is now losing mass at 17 times the rate observed in the 20th century, directly contributing to sea level rise. Extreme weather events are no longer anomalies, they are the new normal. Massive wildfires have displaced hundreds of thousands in California. Droughts and floods are devastating regions of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Coral reefs, vital to marine ecosystems, are undergoing mass bleaching, with over 80% affected during recent marine heat waves. Ocean temperatures are rising 4 times faster than they did at the end of the 20th century. According to recent models, there's now a high likelihood that average global temperatures between 2025 and 2029 will exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. If this happens, a chain of tipping points could be triggered. Ice sheets collapsing into oceans, permafrost releasing methane, and key ocean currents like the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation slowing down or halting altogether.
Human stories in a warming world. Beyond statistics, climate change is deeply personal. A farmer in Kenya builds rock walls to stop his fields from washing away in sudden floods. A family in Bangladesh must rebuild their home every year as the river reclaims their land. A child in Phoenix stays indoors all summer because the pavement outside can burn through shoes. These stories, while scattered around the globe, echoed the same sense of loss, resilience, and urgent need for change. Climate migration on the rise. Climate-driven migration is accelerating. Over 32 million people were displaced by climate-related disasters in 2022 alone, a figure that has doubled in the last decade. By 2050, the World Bank estimates that up to 143 million people from Africa, South Asia, and Latin America could become internal climate migrants. Other estimates suggest the global number could reach over 1 billion. Entire island nations are planning for relocation. In the Pacific, some countries like Tuvalu and Kiribati are already in talks to purchase land abroad. In places like southern Europe and parts of the Middle East, soaring heat and drought are turning farmland to desert, driving rural populations into already crowded cities.
Urban havens and new pressures. While some cities are being swallowed by the sea, others are becoming climate refuges. Places like Toronto, Seattle, and Oslo may see an influx of climate migrants in coming decades. These cities may avoid the worst of rising temperatures and sea levels, but they must prepare for increased population pressures on housing, water supplies, and infrastructure. On the other hand, coastal megacities like Miami, Mumbai, and Lagos are at risk of chronic flooding, water shortages, and infrastructure collapse. By the end of the century, hundreds of millions may live in areas that are permanently below sea level, protected only by levees and seawalls, if those protections hold. Food, water, and scarcity. Climate change is severely impacting global food security.
Droughts and extreme weather are reducing yields of staple crops like wheat, maize, and rice. In some regions, up to 30% of expected harvests have been lost to climate extremes. In southern Africa, prolonged droughts are leading to famine-like conditions. In South Asia, floods have wiped out entire planting seasons. Access to clean water is also under threat. Melting glaciers are altering freshwater supplies for billions of people in Asia and South America. In arid regions, aquifers are being depleted faster than they can be replenished. As rainfall patterns shift, disputes over water resources are intensifying, threatening to spark new regional conflicts. Heat is also changing the geography of disease. Warmer temperatures are expanding the habitats of mosquitoes that carry malaria and dengue fever, placing new populations at risk. Hospital systems are being pushed to their limits in both developing and developed nations. Solutions and signs of hope. Despite the grim forecasts, there is still hope. Renewable energy sources now account for nearly 1/3 of global electricity production. Prices for solar and wind power continue to fall, making them more accessible to developing nations. Electric vehicles are replacing gas-powered cars at increasing rates, and some countries are beginning to implement large-scale carbon capture systems. Urban planning is also adapting. In cities like Singapore and Copenhagen, architecture is evolving to respond to heat and flooding. Some are even exploring underground or elevated infrastructure to cope with extreme weather. Communities are developing drought-resistant crops and improving early warning systems for storms and fires. Social movements are playing a powerful role in driving awareness and accountability. Climate activism among young people is growing rapidly, pressuring governments to adopt more ambitious policies. International climate agreements, though imperfect, are setting global standards and frameworks for action.
The path forward. We are standing at a turning point. Every tenth of a degree we can avoid matters. The difference between 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius may seem small, but it could mean millions more lives disrupted, millions more people displaced, and entire ecosystems lost. We still have time to act, but it is shrinking fast. Immediate and drastic reductions in emissions are required, along with investment in adaptation and support for the most vulnerable communities. Resilience, innovation, and global cooperation are essential. The climate crisis is no longer a distant possibility. It is here, and it is unfolding rapidly. But this crisis also represents a crossroads between collapse and transformation. The future will be determined by the choices we make today. Inaction will mean an unrecognizable world. Rising seas, empty farmlands, cities abandoned, and billions on the move. But if we act with urgency, purpose, and compassion, we can still shape a future that is livable, just, and resilient. Interesting facts about the climate crisis. 1. Unprecedented warming. Global temperatures have risen by about 1.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, with 2024 marking the hottest year on record, surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for the first time. 2. Sea level rise. Since 1880, global sea levels have risen 8 to 9 inches, 21 to 24 centimeters, with the rate accelerating due to melting glaciers and thermal expansion. Coastal areas like Tangier, Virginia, may become uninhabitable within 25 to 50 years. 3. Arctic vulnerability. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average, causing sea ice to shrink at 12.9% per decade since 1979. This threatens polar bears, whose populations may decline by 30% by 2050. 4. Extreme weather costs.
Hurricanes Helen and Milton in 2024 in the U.S., worsened by climate change, caused damages estimated at $50 billion each, with over 200 deaths from Helen alone. 5. Plastic pollution. The world produces 419 million tons of plastic annually, with 14 million tons entering oceans yearly, harming marine ecosystems. By 2040, this could double to 29 million tons without action. 6. Health impacts. Air pollution, exacerbated by climate change, cuts life expectancy by about 5 years in South Asia. In 2021, over 500,000 EU deaths were linked to toxic pollutants. 7. Biodiversity loss. Climate change and habitat destruction are driving the 6th mass extinction, with species loss rates thousands of times faster than natural cycles. And 8. Ocean acidification. Oceans have absorbed 90% of excess heat from greenhouse gases, becoming 0.1 pH more acidic since pre-industrial times, threatening coral reefs and marine life.
These facts show the climate crisis is a multifaceted beast, impacting ecosystems, economies, and human health right now, not just in some far-off future. Key insights from scientific articles. IPCC 6th Assessment Report 2021. Core finding. Human emissions have warmed the planet by 1.1 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times, with 1.5 degrees Celsius likely within decades. Continued emissions will amplify extreme weather, sea level rise, and ecosystem collapse. Urgency. Strong, sustained reductions in CO2 and methane emissions could stabilize temperatures within 20 to 30 years, but some changes, such as sea level rise, are irreversible for centuries. NASA's climate research. Data powerhouse. NASA's Earth Science Division operates 20-plus satellites, tracking everything from sea ice loss to wildfire spread. Their data confirms human-driven warming since the mid-20th century, with Arctic sea ice declining 7.8 to 12.9% per decade. Feedback loops. Shrinking ice reduces Earth's reflectivity, amplifying warming. Oceans absorbing CO2 are nearing saturation, risking faster atmospheric warming. NOAA's Global Climate Dashboard. Real-time impacts. NOAA reports rising temperatures, sea levels, and extreme weather events. Floods, heat waves, and hurricanes are already disrupting ecosystems and communities. Resilience needs. Communities need resilient infrastructure to withstand climate risks, with education for planners and emergency managers being critical. UN reports. Progress and gaps. Since the 2015 Paris Agreement, projected 2030 emissions have dropped from a 16% increase to 3%, but a 28 to 42% reduction is needed to meet 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius targets. Litigation surge. Climate lawsuits have doubled since 2017, linking human rights to climate action and pushing governments and corporations for accountability. Quick takeaway. Scientific consensus is clear. Human activity drives climate change, and while solutions exist, the window for effective action is narrowing fast. Scientists' opinions on the climate crisis. Number 1. Valérie Masson-Delmotte, IPCC co-chair. Climate change is already affecting every region on Earth. The changes we experience will increase with additional warming. We have a clearer picture now, but it's a reality check. We must act urgently. Number 2. Natalie Mahowald, Cornell University. What we're seeing this year is just the tip of the iceberg. Extreme events will worsen without rapid emission cuts. Number 3. Malte Meinhausen, University of Melbourne. Humanity's stubbornness to keep burning fossil fuels is robust, but so are our climate predictions. We're heading for devastation unless we act. Number 4. J. Marshall Shepard, University of Georgia. Climate scientists have warned of this for decades, and we're now living these predictions. It's not theory, it's reality. Number 5. S. Krishna Achyuta Rao, Indian Institute of Technology. The impacts are more frightening than many of us expected. Extreme weather is hitting harder and faster. Number 6. Skepticism and distrust. Some Americans, particularly those doubting human-driven climate change, distrust climate scientists due to perceived political bias or media sensationalism. However, 97% of active climate researchers agree human activity is the primary driver. Quick takeaway. Scientists are united on the urgency, but frustrated by inaction. While skeptics exist, the overwhelming consensus points to human-driven warming and the need for immediate action.
Scientists' predictions for the future. Without swift emission cuts, global warming could hit 2 degrees Celsius by 2041 to 2050, with land areas seeing 3 degrees plus increases. A 4 degrees rise by 2100 is possible under high-emission scenarios. Extreme weather. More frequent and intense heat waves, hurricanes, droughts, and floods are expected, with events like 2023's wildfires becoming normal by 2033 without action. Ecosystem collapse. Melting Arctic ice and permafrost could trigger feedback loops, releasing methane and accelerating warming. Coral reefs and emperor penguin populations face near total loss by 2100. Economic and social impacts. Poorer regions, especially in the global south, could face GDP losses up to 20% with mass migration and food crises from multiple crop failures. Hopeful scenarios. Rapid decarbonization, e.g. scaling renewables, cutting methane, could limit warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees, reducing the worst impacts. Technologies like solar and wind are already cheaper than fossil fuels in many cases. Quick takeaway, scientists see a fork in the road, catastrophe if emissions continue unchecked, or a manageable future with aggressive action. The clock is ticking. All right, let's get real. The climate crisis is like a bad ex who keeps coming back with worse baggage every time. Scientists are screaming, cut emissions now, but humanity's stuck in a toxic relationship with fossil fuels. My prediction, if we keep dragging our feet, we're looking at a world where Miami's underwater, wildfires are a summer tradition, and polar bears are just a memory in VR zoos. By 2050, expect cities to be retrofitted with flood walls, food prices to skyrocket from crop failures. But here's the spicy bit. I think we've got a shot at dodging the apocalypse. Renewables are dirt cheap now. Solar and wind are outpricing gas in many places. If we lean hard into clean tech, electrify everything, and maybe stop treating coal like it's our bestie, we could keep warming under 2 degrees. The tech's here. The problem is politics and greed. I'm betting on human ingenuity to pull through, but it's going to be a wild ride. Think Mad Max meets Waterworld. So grab a reusable straw, ditch the gas guzzler, and let's make the future less toasty.
The climate crisis is a global wake-up call, backed by hard data and urgent warnings from scientists. The facts are stark, the impacts are real, and the future depends on our actions now. Whether it's slashing emissions or building resilient communities, the tools exist. It's about collective will. Let's not just read about it, let's act like the planet's on fire. Because, well, parts of it are. Call to action, share these insights, support climate policies, and push for renewables. The future's not set, but it's up to us to shape it. The Earth is burning with a fever, and humanity's the one stoking the flames. Since the 1800s, our addiction to fossil fuels has pumped billions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, warming the planet by 1.1 degrees Celsius. In 2024, we hit a grim milestone, the hottest year on record, with global temperatures briefly surpassing 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This isn't just numbers on a graph. It's wildfires torching communities, hurricanes like Helene and Milton devastating the U.S. with $100 billion in damages, and Arctic ice melting 4 times faster than the global average, shrinking 12.9% per decade since 1979. In Bangladesh, climate change is a relentless adversary. This low-lying nation, woven with rivers, faces rising seas, up 8 to 9 inches globally since 1880, with the pace doubling recently. In 2024, cyclones and monsoon floods displaced over 1 million people in coastal regions like Khulna. Farmers like Aisha Begum, 45, watch helplessly as saltwater intrusion ruins 20% of Bangladesh's arable land. "The sea is eating our lives," she told local reporters, her village shrinking yearly. With 17 million people at risk of displacement by 2050, Bangladesh is a stark warning of what's to come for vulnerable nations.
The Arctic tells another tale of loss. Once a frozen fortress, its sea ice is turning to slush, threatening polar bears and Inuit communities who've thrived there for millennia. By 2050, polar bear populations could plummet 30%. Oceans, absorbing 90% of excess heat, are growing acidic, down 0.1 pH since the Industrial Revolution, killing coral reefs, the ocean's rainforests. The Great Barrier Reef, for instance, has lost half its coral since 1995. We're in the 6th mass extinction, with species vanishing thousands of times faster than natural rates, driven by habitat loss and warming. The human toll is staggering. In South Asia, air pollution, worsened by climate change, cuts life expectancy by 5 years. In 2021, toxic air killed over 500,000 Europeans. Coastal cities like Miami, Jakarta, and Lagos brace for submersion, while small island nations like the Maldives face existential threats. In 2023, the Maldives president warned, without action, our islands will vanish by 2100. Extreme weather is already a global disruptor. 2024's wildfires in Canada burned 18 million hectares, and Europe's heatwaves pushed temperatures to 48 degrees Celsius in Sicily. Yet, not all is despair. Scientists like Valerie Masson-Delmotte of the IPCC argue that slashing emissions could stabilize temperatures within decades. Since the 2015 Paris Agreement, projected 2030 emissions dropped from a 16% rise to 3%, though a 28 to 42% cut is needed to cap warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius. Solar and wind power now outprice coal in many regions, powering a renewable revolution. In Kenya, for example, geothermal and wind energy supply 90% of electricity, a model for the global south. Innovations like carbon capture and lab-grown meat could curb methane, a potent greenhouse gas.
But the clock is ticking. Without swift action, we're hurtling toward 2 degrees Celsius warming by 2050, with land areas possibly hitting 3 degrees Celsius. This could trigger feedback loops, melting permafrost releasing methane, or shrinking ice reducing Earth's reflectivity, amplifying heat. Poorer nations like Bangladesh face GDP losses up to 20%, alongside mass migrations and food crises from crop failures. Scientists warn of climate apartheid, where the wealthy adapt while the vulnerable suffer. In sub-Saharan Africa, drought has already displaced 12 million people since 2020.
Let's zoom in on another story: Australia's struggle with fire and flood. In 2019-2020, bushfires scorched 24 million hectares, killing 1 billion animals and blanketing Sydney in toxic smoke. Then, in 2022, record floods inundated New South Wales, displacing thousands. "It's like nature's at war with us," said farmer Tom Wilson, whose livestock drowned in the deluge. Australia's warming, 1.4 degrees Celsius since 1910, outpaces the global average, and its coral reefs and eucalyptus forests face collapse by 2040 without intervention. My take: humanity's stubborn but scrappy. We've got the tools: electric vehicles, green grids, reforestation. Bangladesh is fighting back with floating farms and cyclone shelters. Australia's investing in fire-resistant crops. Globally, youth activists like Greta Thunberg are holding leaders accountable, and climate lawsuits have doubled since 2017, pushing for justice. But politics and greed slow us down. By 2050, I see two paths: one where coastal cities drown and wildfires become seasonal, or another where clean energy and resilient systems thrive. The tech exists, solar's cheaper than ever, and AI could optimize energy grids. The real hurdle is us, our inertia, our denial. Imagine a future where Bangladesh's farmers grow crops on floating platforms, where Australia's cities are powered by solar farms, and where global cooperation outpaces division. It's possible, but it demands action now. We're not doomed, but we're flirting with disaster. Let's break this fever, ditch fossil fuels, embrace renewables, and fight for a planet that doesn't cook us. The Earth story isn't over, but it's up to us to write the next chapter.